It is my hope that the Senate will consider and confirm the nominees in the usual expeditious manner. Please accept, distinguished Senate President, the assurances of my highest consideration. Yours sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari.
The bill on the repositioning of Nigeria's oil and gas sector and its domestication in the real sense came to the fore. Senator Taslim Folarin is the sponsor.
It is indeed my honor and privilege to lead this debate on the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act, Amendment Bill 2020. The bill was read the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, May 12, 2020. Mr. President, this bill seeks to amend the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act, Cap 2, 2010, which is the principal act. The bill seeks to amend 38 sections of the extant act while introducing 6 new sections. In addition, Mr. President, amendments are also proposed regarding the schedule to the act to make changes to some Nigerian content targets which have been surpassed in practice. The objective, Mr. President, of the proposed amendments is largely to enhance the implementation of this novel act. The proposed amendments are based on the experience derived from the enforcement of the provisions of the Act by the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board and its application by the players in the Nigerian oil and gas industry. The essence of this exercise is to bring the provisions of these sections intended to be amended into conformity and congruence with current industry best practices flowing from the implementation of the Nordic Act. As you're well aware, the Nigerian Oil and Gas Content Monitoring Development Act was signed into law in April 2010. As you will recall, the principal objectives of making this law were to address the then abysmally low level of Nigerian content in the oil and gas sector of the economy, to monitor industry spend and promote expansion of the portion that is delivered to Nigerian companies and people, to create a regulatory mechanism to monitor and enforce compliance by industry players, to enhance development of capacity of Nigerian companies and create linkages between various sectors of the economy while enhancing value addition, to transfer technology and knowledge to Nigerians and Nigerian companies, and to domesticate substantial parts of oil and gas exploration and production activities within Nigeria. Mr. President, we recall that before this act came into force in 2010, over 90% of the $20 billion spent yearly in the Nigerian oil and gas industry was repatriated abroad. This was because a large chunk of the contracts were executed by foreign companies and foreign facilities, with only few indigenous players and facilities participating in the contracting processing in the industry. Nigerian content was less than 5%. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I have stated before there are 38 sections of the Act that are proposed to be amended in this bill. In addition, six new sections are proposed to be added to the Act, while 4 items in the schedule to the Act are proposed for review. While it may be desirable to provide copious details of each of the amendments here, given the exigency of the moment, I will prefer to provide a detailed summation of the sections proposed for amendment. I'll go to 11. I'll skip 10. The details of some of the proposed amendments in the principal sections and the rationale are stated below. Section 3 is amended to change and enhance consistency by changing the term independent operator to Nigerian company, which is used throughout the entire bill. Also, the section is further amended to properly define the appropriate recipients of first consideration in order to exclude companies not beneficially or legally owned by Nigerians. 2. Section 4 of the Act is proposed to be amended to add the word development to the name of the board to correct an obvious mistake and omission in several sections of the Act. 3. Section 7 of the Act is amended to ensure that the Nigerian content plan to be submitted by contractors will demonstrate capacity to comply rather than actual compliance, to correct the flaw introduced by semantics in the Act. 5. Section 11 is amended to set out the process for receiving authorization to derogate from the capacity specified in the Act, and to give powers to the Minister to review the minimum target level for Nigerian content set in the schedule where the level is considered beyond the capacity of Nigerian companies by the board. Section 15 is proposed to be amended to change the term indigenous to Nigerian companies for legal consistency. Section 17 is proposed to be amended to accommodate contracts denominated in Naira rather than only a single dollar currency utilized throughout the bill. This amendment is effected in all relevant sections of the bill. Amendment is also proposed in Section 33 of the Act to streamline and strengthen the process for obtaining expatriate quota, to close the gap for current leakages and manipulation by some foreign companies. Section 37, 38, 39 are proposed to be amended to improve the provisions relating to research and development and to ensure proper implementation. Amendment is also proposed to Section 56 to streamline the joint qualification system for registration and pre-qualification of contractors and to ensure consistency and full implementation. Section 58 is proposed to be amended to add gas value chain and gas operators to the stakeholders constituting the Nigerian Content Consultative Forum, an obvious omission in the Act. Sections 68, 69 are proposed in order to introduce administrative sanctions to enable the board to handle cases of infractions of some relevant provisions of the Act. Section 70, which forms a new Section 71 in this bill, is substantially amended to provide for public-private partnerships, collaboration to establish centers of skill acquisition and research and development initiatives, and to encourage participation by Nigerians in the diaspora. Section 76 is proposed to be amended to give the Governing Council of the board the role of superintending over the conditions of service of employees of the board. Again, an obvious omission of the Act. Section 81 is introduced into the bill to empower the Senate to screen and approve the nomination of the Executive Secretary of NCDMB before confirmation. Section 89 is amended to increase the number of directorates in the board from 4 to 7 to enhance the performance of the board. Section 105 is amended to increase the contribution to the Nigerian Content Development Fund from 1% to 2%, and also to expand the scope for contribution to cover relevant mainstream and downstream operations. Mr. President, apart from the above sections, amendments are also proposed to insert a few items into the schedule that were not previously provided for in order to improve the implementation of the Act. 13, in line with our Standing Order 77.3, this bill does not have any financial implication on the government as the structures for the operations are already in place. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, a separate bill which seeks to implement local content legislations in other sectors of the economy will be presented, hopefully, in the next legislative sitting. The reason for separating this bill from the NOGIT Act is in recognition of the peculiarities of the oil and gas industry. Oil and gas, Mr. President, remains the bedrock of the nation's economy and needs a specialized legislation compared to other sectors. NOGIT Act provides that specialized legislation and has experienced gains since its enactment in 2010. In conclusion, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act 2010 recognizes and anticipates the necessity for periodic review and amendments for its provisions in order to update its content in accordance with emerging industry best practices and the exigencies of implementation. Mr. President, this is the intention of the Act which this bill seeks to implement. It is noteworthy that the Act has achieved the initial objectives for which it was enacted. In addition, the watermark for periodic review of the salient provisions of this Act after its commencement has long been surpassed. Therefore, the time is right now for this review and amendment. This bill before this distinguished Senate contains these relevant amendments of salient provisions of the Act based on the above rationale. I therefore urge you, Mr. President, and my respected colleagues, to support this bill for second reading. Thank you.
As the pioneer chairman of this committee in the Senate, let me start by commending the chairman of this committee for at last taking the bull by the horn, because this amendment is long overdue. And I want to believe the amendment will start even from the heading, which is Nigeria Oil and Gas Industry Bill, should now be Nigeria Industry Content Development Act. Because, Mr. President, for those who initially put this act into place, we must commend them. And I believe the oil and gas sector was a test case. And now that we have succeeded in trying to see that local content has come to stay in the oil and gas sector, it is time for us to move to other line sectors, which include manufacturing, ICT, construction, and other sectors of the economy. Mr. President, the main objective of this particular act is for two things. One, for domestication, and two, for domiciliation. That is the reason why ab initio the local content was set up. If going by what the objective of this stands for, one important way that which we can drive this economy is to ensure that we have local content in all sectors of our economy. And I strongly believe that with the amendment proposed to the existing act, as contained in the summarized document given to us by the chairman, we cover all of these other line sectors, so that we start having Nigerians playing domineering role in all of this sector by sector. As it is today, Mr. President, long before now, before the advent of the Nigerian content oil and gas industry, the budget of the oil and gas company, especially those in the upstream, which are just 6 of them, only 5% of that budget is implemented in Nigeria. The remaining 95% is operated outside of this country. But with the advent of the Local Content Act on the oil and gas, we have succeeded even in ensuring that 30% to 28% of their budget are implemented in Nigeria. But the target is to ensure that at a point in time, more than 50 to 60% of that budget will be implemented in this country. And that is only in oil and gas sector. Let's go to other sectors where we have foreigners domineering all these sectors. How much is their budget are they operating in Nigeria? And I believe this amendment, which I believe will be all-encompassing in covering other sectors of the economy, will go a long way. At one, repositioning direct investment into this country. Two, we increase the source of foreign currency into this country. And also put our country in the right place among the community of nations as far as local content is concerned. There are so many things happening in this country that foreigners will come and do that we cannot go to that country and reciprocate the same.
The importance of this bill is underscored by the importance of the need for us to streamline our law in a timely fashion with experience in reality. This is a novel approach for which I commend the sponsor, Senator Teslim Folari. And I want to commend to all of us too in this Allo chamber that this is exemplary, that we should be taking it so that our laws will not be dead letters in our statute book. Our laws will not just be there without serving the current reality. The proposed amendment here is well thought out and is predicated on the need to make the law more efficacious, to be more dynamic, and to be in line with reality. So I support the bill to go to pass the second reading. Thank you, Mr. President.
Before the introduction of the local content, you hardly see Nigerians play a major role in the oil industry. But immediately after the local content is introduced, we saw quite a number of Nigerian companies coming in to participate in the exploration and the exploration of oil in Nigeria. And it means that the earnings will be retained locally instead of repatriating whatever is earned outside. So secondly, more Nigerians are being trained. They acquire professional skills in the oil industry. And this will go a long way in making sure that in the long run, Nigerians will take destiny of their economy into their own hands. As done in other countries like Indonesia, Mexico, where local operators are the ones that are dominating the oil industry. Here in Nigeria it's quite different. Lastly, Mr. President, the involvement of Nigerians in the oil sector, oil and gas sector, will go a long way in diversifying our economy. So for this reason, I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment. There are other local contexts that we have to consider, but this bill is only talking about oil and gas. But there is need to also look at other sectors of the economy, like construction industry, informal sector of the economy, where you find Chinese, Indians taking, control instead of Nigerians doing it. So maybe perhaps there is need to introduce another bill for that. Thank you, Mr. President.
This very important bill, which is timely and captures very important sections of the initial law or act that needs to be amended in order to expand the participation of Nigerians by way of local content in this very important industry. As you said, Mr. President, this bill is about sections that need to be amended in order to make the law more effective. I will urge my colleagues to support this bill so that when it goes to passes through second reading during the public hearing, experts in this field will also look at the bill critically to give more input. So far, the chairman have been able, or with the committee, to succeed in identifying 16 sections that needs amendment to make the law more effective. I believe with his experience and determination and knowledge in order to expand and make this law more effective, more could be done to bring out a better law that will expand the field. Because up to now, Nigeria depends so much on the formal sector, that is to say government, for employment and opportunities. It is high time now we expand this area to make sure that the informal sector, which is supposed to be the majority employee, provide employment for our restive youths and qualified people, train people very well, and expand the industry. As other colleagues said, we need to also look at other sectors that could provide opportunity for Nigerians at this critical time. I therefore urge our colleagues to support this very important amendment and also to contribute, because I know there are some experts in this chamber that are involved in oil and gas industry that can contribute and helping the committee to do a better and more effective job. Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
I rise to equally commend the chairman, local content, for proposing this amendment. Mr. President, there is no gainsaying that the Nigerian Oil and Gas Content Act have actually achieved the much that was desired of it. It is also possible that, yes, we are not where we are supposed to be, but we are not also where we used to be. So I must commend the effort of the chairman of this committee in sponsoring this amendment to ensure an effectiveness in the implementation of this noble act. Mr. President, one area we'll have to also look at is the empowerment of the board to equally prosecute defaulters. That's one area that will actually strengthen the effective implementation of this act. I must also commend the board, Mr. President, for recently, I understand, like the chairman had actually stated here, about setting aside the sum of $200 million just to empower and capacitate the local content. And based on the objectives and based on the set targets and timelines that we have seen here on the basis of the strength of this debate, there is no gainsaying, Mr. President, that the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Act will definitely reposition the Nigerians in the oil and gas industry. And I must also commend the proposal to also extend this act to other sectors of our economy. Once we get to that, also the debate will also contribute in that regard.
Mr. President, I listened with rapt attention to the lead debate, which is very scholarly. What is put into that lead debate is one that has revealed everything about the Local Content Act, and incidentally, when that bill was passed on the floor of the Senate, the chairman of the committee today, who is the sponsor of this particular amendment bill, was the Senate leader. And it was an executive bill that was passed, presented by him. And thank God, today is the one that is now seeking for amendment. And it's a well-researched one. All the items there definitely require serious amendment. And what I want to inform the Senate is that built up to this particular act, the purpose for which this act was, this bill was passed and was assented to by Mr. President at the time, is even yet to be achieved in so many ways. It's not just about the Nigerian content. The local content we are talking about, you need to bring it back to even the environment where these things have been done. That has not been achieved. So we hope and pray that with these serious amendments that are being proposed, if we get the approval of the Senate, which I urge all senators to support, and if it's assented to by Mr. President, we hope and pray that it will get the required the support of the players in the industry. The players in the industry is the major problem we have here. And Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, it remains to be seen about what this particular committee is proposing for the same law to be enacted about other sectors, and possibly a better understanding of these proposals that are before us will be when we have that which is holistic about the local content for all other subsectors in the country. That way, we'll be able to appreciate better what these proposals are all about.
The second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, the bill for an act to amend the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act 2010 and for other matters connected thereto 2020, second reading.
Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act 2010 and for other matters connected thereto 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Local Content to report back within 4 weeks.
The Federal Tertiary Teaching Hospitals Development Tax Fund Establishment Bill, sponsored by Senator Sani Musa, also passed second reading as Senate called on the federal government to quickly respond to communities in Barutin, Edu, and Kayama local government areas of Kwara State destroyed by rainstorm as moved by Senator Sadiq Umar.
You may all recall that the bill was read for the first time on Wednesday, 6th November 2019. Mr. President, as we are all aware today in Nigeria, adequate health care delivery has remained a mirage. That's why the limited funding from government, external financing, insurance, individuals, corporate donations, community financing, and user charges in the health sector, our healthcare delivery system is still in comatose, with resultant high morbidity and mortality. Inadequate manpower development and poor infrastructures, absence of basic facilities and utilities have not made things any better. With the general poverty status of our people, the lack of political will and poor health administration and leadership, the future of health industry seems hopeless. Nigeria, with a population estimated to be about 200 million, and Africa's most populous nation, with enormous sources of revenue, has always been allocating minimal resources to funding basic healthcare delivery and capital expenditure in its annual budgetary allocations, which portend danger to the well-being of our citizens. Mr. President, with your permission, I will go just summarize. That's why the National Assembly consistency in appropriating at least 4.5% of the federal government's recurrent expenditure to the health sector in the national budget, and looking at our healthcare spending in comparison to our gross domestic product as presented by the World Bank for the year 2000 to 2017, the percentage indicator is grossly inadequate for a nation like ours compared to the challenges the health sector faces today. The objectives of this bill: the bill is to provide the legal institutional framework for the establishment of the Federal Tertiary Teaching Hospitals Development Tax Fund, to take care of the funding of tertiary hospitals, federal medical centers, science and medical research institutions. At this point, to prove the importance of public spending on health sector, even the developed countries appropriate adequately for healthcare. Example, Spain's health budget was greater than 1 billion euros, while Japan's health success implementation is rooted in its adequate financing. Yet, we can imagine despite such adequacies, they still had challenges with COVID-19 pandemic. What it means is that Nigerian government must continue to assume the main responsibility for financing health sector.
A very good afternoon and welcome to News Panorama from Sokoto Network Center. I am Abdurrahman Usman Jibrila. The attention of the presidency has been drawn to the media reports alleging that President Muhammadu Buhari has cancelled a number of memos and appointments signed off by his former chief of staff. A statement by the senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, says this is not surprisingly, as these reports have quoted unnamed sources. The statement said there is no iota of truth in these reports, and Nigerians should ignore the insinuations behind them, as since President Buhari was duly re-elected by Nigerians, he has not and will never cede to anyone else the power and trust given to him by Nigerian people. Lockdown or not, at home or school, the Nigerian children must be celebrated and empowered to attain their full potentials of becoming responsible citizens. This is the submission of the Minister of Women Affairs during the commemoration of this year's Children's Day in a lockdown. Monso Damien Detti reports.